Welcome to Real Talk with Tina and Ann. I am Ann, and today's episode is called Life in Tandem for a reason. And I named it that because this is a partnership with perseverance and purpose after life took an unexpected turn. My guests are Deborah Meyerson. She was a former tenured Stanford professor, and Steve Zuckerman, her husband and care partner. Together, they co authored Identity Theft Rediscovering Ourselves After Stroke. And this is the second edition. And they have founded the nonprofit Stroke Onward to support stroke survivors and families. And they help survivors rebuild not just physical strength, but a sense of self. Deborah's 2010 stroke changed everything for her and her husband and her families, her career, her independence, even her voice, but not her determination. And together, Deborah and Steve have redefined what it means to live and love in the aftermath of trauma. Deborah and Steve, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Let's start at the beginning. You wrote that sometimes we think life will go one way, and then we realize that our plans were not going to happen. I mean, you were a tenured Stanford professor, and it didn't go the way that you planned at all. You at first thought your stroke was a blip, but it turned out to be extremely life altering. Can you take us back to that Labor Day weekend in 2010? What happened?
The 6 months before the stroke, I had a really headache, really severe headache. I am so the doctors didn't know, and the neurologist didn't know. Yeah.
Want me to help a little?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Deb had some symptoms, but went through all the testing you would go through, and they didn't find anything. And
Mm,
on that Labor Day weekend, we were actually headed to the mountains to Lake Tahoe with two of our three kids and a friend and our dog. And Deb's leg just started acting funny. It didn't hurt,
mm,
but it was kind of buckling a little bit at certain times. And
mm.
Deb being Deb was, yeah, don't worry about it. It's going to be
Yeah.
fine. And we went on our
Yeah.
way. And
Well,
to make a long story short, after a hike and a dinner and Deb sleeping overnight, she asked for some aspirin and had trouble reaching for it with her right hand. And
hmm.
somewhere I had heard that if you're having trouble on one side of the body, arm and leg, that could be a sign of a stroke. And so with the leg acting
Wow.
funny and the arm not working, we just got her straight to a hospital. Um,
Wow.
and that began an unwanted journey.
Yeah.
It was very quickly diagnosed as a stroke. Um, and you mentioned that sort of we thought of it as a blip.
Yeah.
I'm an optimist by nature. You know, every cup is three-quarters full.
Yeah.
And Deb is a workhorse. And, you know, even after the devastating impact and, you know, immediately following the stroke, about 24 hours after the first symptoms of the stroke, Deb was fully paralyzed on the right side, had no voice whatsoever, couldn't get a sound out. You know, she got into therapy, you know, 2 months in the hospital, lots of complexity. But when she finally got into therapy, things were improving. And we just thought, you know, with access to good therapy and the work ethic that Deb has, eventually we'd get back to life as we knew it. But as
Mm,
you said, you know, the body and health had different plans, and Deb still lives while she's recovered a tremendous amount of
hmm.
capability. She still lives with disabilities, and particularly the aphasia, which is a
Yeah.
communication disorder,
Yeah.
made it impossible for her to go back to being a full-time professor.
I am still adjunct professor.
Oh, you are?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. That's
Yeah.
great.
No, I think being part of that community is really important. Uh,
Right.
kind of our work with Stanford now is more
Yeah,
with people in the med school because of our work around stroke and with Stroke Onward. But Deb still maintains her affiliation with the School of Education, even though she's not actively engaged in that kind of academia anymore.
Okay. Well, you know what? That's amazing that you can still keep that community.
yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah.
You just mentioned aphasia. Could you talk more about exactly what that is? I mean, I've known some people that have had that, and I also know of some people that, with lots of disabilities, and you almost feel sometimes that you're trapped. Can you talk more about that?
Speech is really important. Is to 1 year after my stroke, I have no speech at all, really little speech.
Wow.
And
Wow.
and I am it's really hard to be the professor of the organizational behavior. 3 years after my stroke, I really had no my dean of the ed school.
Want me to help?
Yeah,
He kind of had the dean, who was wonderful, kind of had no choice. Stanford has a policy that says if you can't return to your job after 3 years of medical leave, they need to
Hmm.
fill the position with someone else. And that was,
Hmm.
that was sort of we sometimes call that trauma number two, because that was sort of
Right.
what forced us to realize that life would be different. You asked about aphasia, and that it's a communication disorder. It's not just a speech disorder. So for Deb, aphasia can take many different forms or have many different ramifications. For Deb, hers is what's called expressive aphasia, where she has thoughts clear in her mind, but being able to get them out either through
Mm,
words, or she doesn't have use of her right hand, but she can type with her left. But the same, again, it's not a speech challenge, it's a communication challenge. So the
right.
same difficulty finding words to speak is true finding words to type as well. There are other forms of
yeah.
aphasia, like fluent aphasia, where people speak
Okay.
very fluently, but often the words that come out aren't the words they mean. So the meaning isn't there.
Ugh,
There's also something called receptive aphasia, which, even for us, it's hard to understand how frustrating that would be, where the hearing is fine, so the sound is getting in to the ears, and but the brain's not processing it. So you hear sounds, but they mean nothing to you. So these are all different forms of aphasia or different manifestations of aphasia. And aphasia, about a third of all stroke survivors suffer some kind of aphasia. And then there are other causes of aphasia as well, but
yeah.
stroke is the leading cause of aphasia.
And the Gabby Gifford is the gun the gun. She has the
Gabby Giffords, who's the congresswoman from Arizona, who
Right. I know who she
uh,
is. Yeah.
and her aphasia is very similar to Deb's, even though it very different cause, very different kind of injury to the brain, but clearly, and that's one of the things about aphasia, but also about stroke more broadly, is the brain is so complicated. And, just if the injury to the brain, whether it's caused by a stroke or by a gunshot wound, if that injury is just, a millimeter to the left or a millimeter to the right, the disabilities that it creates could be
Right.
dramatically different, because, just different parts of the brain control, it's the nerve center or the control center for so much of our, really all of our bodily action. So depending on what part is damaged, that's what creates very, very different effects of a stroke.
You spent 2 months in 4 hospitals and came out unable to speak like you're talking about. And for a professor whose life was built on words,
Oh,
I mean, that must have been one of the hardest parts for this. I mean, your life was teaching and making a difference at Stanford, and your loss of identity was a theme that is woven throughout your story and others.
yeah.
So many times, what we do, is our mission. That's who we are. And you said I was still thinking like a social scientist, but my body just wouldn't do what I needed it to do. Could you talk more about that loss of identity?
I am still the same person, and
Mm-hmm.
the the I am not the same person. It's really,
Okay.
it's the body is, the identity is central to my,
I mean, what I like to say is that, and there are lots of like funny anecdotes of how we discovered even very early after the stroke, despite Deb's inability to talk at all or move her right side, that the Deb we knew was still inside.
Mm,
And so in a lot of ways, she really is still the same person,
mm-hmm.
same ethic, same ideas, same values, but her ability to express all of that has changed because she has both physical disabilities and most consequentially the aphasia that
yeah,
affects her communication. And when Deb said, so in some ways I'm still the same person, yes,
Right.
can't necessarily live out that person the same way. And that is a
yeah.
frustration that Deb lives every day.
It's 3 times a day. Real,
I, I'm so sorry for that. I mean, that must really be frustrating. As a kid, I have autism. And so as a kid, it was very difficult for me to speak. It took me years to develop my speech and to
Yeah.
get where I am. I understand a little bit of what it feels like for your brain to be saying all these things, but it's not coming out.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it is very frustrating. So I am sorry that you are going through that.
15 years ago. It's really,
Long time.
yeah,
Yeah, no, but then,
Yeah.
but then, as Deb said, but there are ways in which she's a different person, and you know,
Right.
everybody's identity changes with more life
Yes.
experiences, and
I am a grandmother.
that's a great new identity.
That's amazing. Yes, that's a
But
beautiful
also,
identity.
while she's incredibly frustrated, she's also a more patient person now than she was
See,
because she was
see.
forced to be.
Hmm.
And so there are ways in which, and that's one of the themes of the book and our work,
Yes.
is we hate the expression silver lining. We just don't like it because it doesn't feel very silver.
Mm,
But there's a theory called post-traumatic growth. There are ways that when you've suffered something horrible, terrible, you can find ways to grow in the aftermath. And I think that's one of the things that I jokingly say to Deb when she's incredibly frustrated. There's a really good book out there.
Yeah.
You should read it again. Because it's one thing to understand, and it's another thing to live it. It
oh,
just it's
sure.
hard.
Yeah, I mean, when you talked about this earlier, but when you lost your position at Stanford, and it's really amazing what you guys did with that because there are levels of loss, but you did turn it around. And like you're saying, you took a positive spin on it, and you wrote the first edition of Identity Theft, and now you have just released the second edition, and you have a mission to help others. So taking your pain and turning it into purpose is a beautiful thing. Can you talk about that transition that you took and how you got to being able to just say, you know what, we're going to sit down, we're going to write this book, and we're going to help others?
3.5 years after my stroke, I am really depressed, and I am
Okay.
the I am going to write the book. I don't know about it.
Want me to help?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for Deb, in many ways, the process to start writing a book was an act of defiance. It was,
Yes.
I still feel like an academic. They're telling me I can't be a traditional academic. Screw that. I'm gonna write a book. And candidly, when she first said it, I thought she was nuts.
Yeah.
Because at that point, I mean, her speech was far less good than it is now.
Oh,
But it very quickly, as Deb realized that the book she wanted to write was turning this expertise she had around identity
Yeah.
as a lens on herself
yeah.
to understand her recovery, the book writing process very quickly became first her journey.
Yeah.
I sometimes say it was the cheapest 5 years of therapy we ever could have embarked on,
Mm,
because it really was a therapeutic process for both
mm,
of us.
And the 5 years, it's so long.
To write the book. And it really was in the book writing process that Deb sort of anchored on how important meaning and purpose is to
Yeah.
herself, but
hmm
most people.
Yeah.
And that one of the things she was suffering most was that sense that the purpose she had around academia and creating knowledge and teaching students and research, she had lost that. But it was really important to her. How could she recreate that in a different form? And that's really what got her to push through the frustration of writing the book to finish it,
Yeah.
because there were a few times
hmm
she was ready to throw in the towel,
hmm
understandably.
Yeah.
But then also for us to start Stroke Onward,
Yeah.
because we realized we had sort of stumbled on another way for Deb and
Yeah.
us to have meaning and purpose in terms of trying to advance knowledge and improve the healthcare system for millions.
Right. I love that you took and you figured out another way to communicate.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, that is just, like you're saying about the glass being 3/4 full. I mean, I just love
Yeah.
your perspective. And lots of times it does come down to perspective when we are living life and we have these life-changing moments and we have to pivot. We just
Yeah.
have to figure out how to pivot. How could you talk more about that to people who are maybe they've had some kind of a life-altering event and they have to pivot?
Yeah. Yeah. The stroke is one thing, and old age is another thing, and
Mm, yeah.
the cancer is and brain injury, and three subjects are in the book are brain injury, muscular dystrophy, and ALS.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I think, our lived experiences with stroke, but we think that kind of what we've learned and what we continue to learn is relevant to a much, much broader. It really is, how do you rebuild after a trauma that changes your life? And I think one of the things, and we say this in the book, is it's getting past, very often we think of our identities in the job we hold.
Yeah.
So Deb's
hmm
identity as a
Right.
Stanford professor, the real door opener was trying to say, okay, what is it about being a Stanford professor that Deb really loves, that Deb really finds meaningful? And we boiled that down to creating and sharing knowledge.
Mm,
That's why she went into academia in the first place. So
hmm
now, if she can't be a university professor full time, given her current capabilities, is there some other way to create and share knowledge? And that was
hmm
sort of the opener to, like, say, yeah, well, we now have this really interesting combination of skills and experiences. Deb, as an expert on identity, her lived experience as a stroke survivor, mine as a care partner, my background creating and running nonprofits. Maybe there's a way we can create and share knowledge together that's different than academia.
Yeah.
And so I think we're really hesitant to give advice because everybody's situation is different. But the observation we have is that very often people get stuck in the what of their identity rather than the why of their identity.
I agree.
And that was a real linchpin for us in moving forward and creating new opportunity.
Yeah, I agree.
And again, it's about being willing and giving yourself permission to become something different with what you already have, what you already know. You just built upon and became different and allowed yourself to become different. I mean, that's a really beautiful thing. I think that that's such a good lesson for people that come across different things in life that all of a sudden it didn't go the way that we planned.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's life. It really is.
25 people are in the book interviewed, and care partners and friends of.
Yeah, just that in the process of writing the book, it was funny because people would say to Deb, "Oh, you're writing a memoir," and she would say, "No." And that's part of she was still an academic. She didn't want to write just a personal story. She wanted to research. She wanted to understand other people's stories because she knew that her was just one of many.
Right.
Deb was saying that, I think we interviewed about 55 people in total, 25 whom were survivors, and the rest were family members, care partners, medical professionals, etc. But you used a word, if I can, you talked about giving yourself permission to be somebody different. I think that word permission is good in another sense, because the other place where we find people often don't want to give themselves permission, but need to, is the permission to grieve.
Yes.
That you've lost something. You could even say you've lost someone. You've lost yourself.
Right.
And that deserves to be grieved.
Yeah.
And and like people talk about in the context of losing loved ones, you never finish grieving.
Yeah.
That's a lifelong process. You're going to miss that person forever. Just like Deb is going to miss her old capabilities and the person she was with them forever. But how do you give yourself that permission, but not let it bog you down, not let it become where you live all the time? And so I thought your use of the word permission is a really important one.
Well, and it can be used, like you're saying, in so many ways, and we don't have to be bogged down by it. But being able to move forward with it, I think, is what is so important. Just being able to move forward, whatever that looks like. And you guys did that, and you did it together. And I love Care Partner. One of the things I wanted to ask you, Steve, was, you're such a good care partner to your wife. Can you please talk about what was happening with you as you watched your very strong wife go through this?
Yeah, I mean, on a bunch of, one, it was just painful to watch her have to go through this, and still is, just whenever there are things that are driving her crazy, when she's frustrated. I think early on, just like I said, I'm an optimist. I'm also just I've lived my life solving problems. And so, I was sort of, it fit my personality to help. And I've also said many times, if Deb hadn't been the fighter that she was, I'm not sure I would have been a very good care partner. I'm not very good at sort of dealing with unhappiness and complacency. And so if she had been a complaining stroke survivor, I probably wouldn't have been a very good partner for her. But that's not who she is. She's a fighter, and she was going to do everything she could to make to get better and to make the best of it. And so that sort of played well into my personality. I think,
Mm,
I think the big thing for care partner, for my role is making choices. It's sort of how do you create a balance to be there for the person you love,
mm,
not give up so much of who you are and what you love to
hmm.
to live in resentment, because
Okay.
then you become a bad care partner, because no relationship survives resentment very long, very well. And so it really was that. I mean, I think probably the most extreme example is when Deb first decided to write a book. I was about 7 years into building a nonprofit that I cared deeply about, and I wasn't willing to give that up. I knew that if I did, it would have been a problem. So I helped with the first edition of the book, but wasn't willing to kind of give it the full-time effort. I did it nights and weekends, but we found other help to make that book writing process helpful. And I think you may know that sort of it ended up being our oldest son who was the named co-author
Hmm.
of the first
Yeah.
book. He played a big role. He was between jobs and played a big role in the final stages of that book. Um, but then when the book came out and we decided to start Stroke Onward, at that point, I kind of was at a place in my career and saw the opportunity with Stroke Onward and our complementary skills that at that point, I was willing to step out of a leadership position at that organization, hand the
Mm,
to others, and come back in. So I think, for me, a big part, I had people close to me give me good advice at the very beginning, which is, Steve, if you don't stay healthy physically and emotionally,
mm. Yeah,
you
you got to take care of you.
you
Uh-huh.
can't be any help. And
Right.
so I think it's just always, and that's a struggle. Finding the right balance is a struggle we still have today, 15 years later. Deb was an awesome skier, racer, better skier than I am. We both loved
Mm,
skiing. We lived a lot of our life with our kids. It was like our family passion. And now, through a combination of the stroke, Deb did get back on skis, but then broke her hip.
oh
And
no.
the risk of skiing, she's given up skiing. So, do I give it up? Every time I go skiing without her, it's painful. I mean, I know it's painful. And yet,
Mm,
she knows that there really isn't a reason I can't take 5 or 10 days a year and do something that I love. And so striking that balance is hard. And, we go through our moments around stuff like that. But that's one of the reasons you mentioned tandem and cycling. That's one of the reasons cycling has become
mm-hmm.
such a big part of our life post-stroke. We were both bicycle riders, but now ride a tandem because it's something we both love to do and can still do together. So it's choices that we try to make.
And you so deeply care about each other and what each other thinks. It sounds like even though you're moving on in some respects, it's also you are doing it together, but it's also painful as you try to make these decisions. I mean, that is really beautiful how you do everything. I mean, it's just such an
Well,
example of what a husband and wife should be.
mm, mm.
Sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you're allowed to have your problems like anybody in relationship, especially in spousal relationships. I wanted to talk about the book, and part of your book does include your story, but it also includes others. As you mentioned earlier, there are a lot of other people's stories in there, from a really young person all the way. I mean, there are so many walks of life represented here. What were some of the biggest takeaways as you share other people's stories whose bodies were also very affected unexpectedly and abruptly?
I have really a lot of takeaways. 15 years later, I am still getting better. And
Mm-hmm.
I am aphasia is so difficult.
Want some help?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think a big part of it is we quote somebody we heard say this once. When you've met one stroke survivor, well, you've met one stroke survivor.
Mm,
Because of those issues of the damage being a little bit different for everyone, um, everybody's journey is different. And I think there were really two things that were universally true of everybody we interviewed for the book. One was people who keep working at it keep getting better.
Yeah.
There was this trope in the medical profession that most of the recovery happens in the first 6 to 12 months. And while it is true that most of the fastest improvement is in early on, it keeps going. And Deb's doing 15 years later and still getting better. We literally, we went with a walk with friends just the other day, and they said, "Oh my God, Deb, your gait is so much better than it was
wow.
last time I
Okay.
saw you 3 months ago."
Yeah.
And then the second is that everybody goes through this emotional, that recovery isn't just rehabilitation. It's the emotional journey. It's the rebuilding of identity. It's the rebuilding of life. And that's true for everyone we talk to, and nobody gets help with it. And that really was the genesis of starting Stroke Onward.
And the families, the emotion, and friends and families and care partners. The book is
Stroke is a family illness. Yeah, just that it really does impact all the people close to a survivor, not just the survivor. And I think one of the things that we talk about a lot is that it doesn't just impact our lives, it impacts our identities too.
Yeah.
We become different people because of the experience.
Yeah, I mean, you just touched on the skiing, but I would imagine that that's just a small part of your life that you had to change.
Yeah,
Everything. You did talk about grief earlier, and you mentioned about its cycles of grief, not just something that you go through the stages and then it's over. It just keeps hitting you in different ways. Could you talk about those cycles and how they show up and how you've learned to move through them more with grace?
I am still learning. My grandson is born, and I am so happy, and I am so sad. It's really
both. Right.
yes, and it's really the grief is so.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge that we've sort of discovered is that it's very often in the happiest moments when grief comes pouring back in. So like Deb said, when our grandson Nilan was born 15 months ago, that was just pure joy.
Yeah.
And then the next morning, Deb was ready to take my head off at every turn. She was so frustrated because she was thinking about all the ways she couldn't be the grandmother that she had always envisioned being, teaching him to ski, teaching him to sail, things that she probably won't be able to do.
And changing the diaper.
Yeah, just, we're there trying to be helpful to our son and daughter-in-law. And there are so many ways Deb can't be helpful just because she only has use of one arm. And so what's safe, what's not safe. And so, here in the happiest of moments, the grief comes pouring back in. And how do you acknowledge it, that permission again? How do you acknowledge it, give it space, but then get past it by refocusing back on what's wonderful in the moment? And you can't avoid that grief, because if you tried to, it would mean avoiding all these really happy things, and that wouldn't be a good way to live your life. So it really is how do you refocus yourself, acknowledge it, say, yep, it sucks, maybe have a little pity party, find somebody you can vent with for a few minutes, but then refocus back on, but isn't it wonderful that we can
Mm,
be here in New York with our brand new grandson and, and all the wonderful aspects of it. So that happens all the time.
Yeah.
And that's what we sort of dubbed cycles of grief,
hmm
as a, it's just going to be part of life for forever.
I love how you allow yourself to do that cycle, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't ignore it.
Yeah.
You go through. And that is really the only way to get to the other side and to grow from each time that cycle hits.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. There you
Speaking
go.
about cycling, um, you like you said, and you went 4,500 miles across the country
Yeah.
together. I mean, together, you guys did that for Stroke
Yeah.
Across America.
Uh,
And
I,
I mean, that just wasn't just a trip. I mean, that's a big deal. What inspired you to take that on, and what did you discover about yourselves and the stroke community along the way?
yeah. Really, I love the cycling, and the stroke community is 16 community events across the country. It's really a lot of the work, and so many people are grieving and yeah.
And recovering. I mean, it was, we hosted these 16 events. We probably interacted with 1,000 or more people, mostly survivors and their families. And it just reinforced our belief that this issue of rebuilding identity and the emotional journey and recovery is important and often overlooked. And then just how inspiring
Yeah.
people are who have kind of,
Yeah.
like us, sort of figured out this path on their own, and many of whom are doing incredible things.
Mm,
It sort of increased our resolve. We had founded Stroke Onward in 2019, but thought we'd keep it a pretty small thing. And it really made us think that this needs to be bigger. There's more work to be done, and
mm,
led us to recruit, given our age and becoming grandparents and wanting to slow down a little bit. We knew that trying to really build a nonprofit is a boatload of work, and we were probably a little too old to take that on directly. And so, shortly after the trip, we recruited an experienced nonprofit CEO who's now leading Stroke Onward, so that hopefully we can do more, build it into something bigger, and make more of a difference.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Stroke Onward, but before we do that, I just want to what was your map across America? I mean, what did you do? And did you just make stops along the way and meet people in the stroke community along the
Well,
way? And
the 15 events across this country is this we are the not moving.
So, rest days,
Yeah.
which we started to call stress days. The
Mhm.
No, so the trip was all planned out.
Yeah.
I mean, because we were organizing these events, we had to know when we were going to be in a place at a given time. So we had a
Mm,
schedule. We hired somebody who is an experienced bike trip organizer and tour guide. We had a support vehicle. We ended up inviting two other survivors, one stroke survivor, one brain injury survivor, to ride with us.
okay.
And then we ended up with two college student summer interns
Mm,
with us as well. So there was sort of a core group of six that pretty much rode all the way. We always had a support driver, and we spent most nights in campgrounds. Our support vehicle was an RV. We kind of
okay.
we wanted to be a little more comfortable. So we got to sleep in the RV. We stayed in motels every once in a while. kind of when we needed to do laundry and there wasn't a good campground nearby. But that was all planned out in advance by somebody who had the job of making sure all that worked. He and I kind of did the route together, but then it was his job, and then he hired. For part of the time, he was the support driver, and then at other times he had staff. He and his wife run a small bicycle tripping company. So it was very planned out, and it was spectacular. Riding cross country was something on my bucket list since one of my best friends from college did it 2 years after we graduated. And so, it was something we could do, that was something we wanted to do personally, but then we could turn it into something to really help raise awareness and give the Stroke Onward organization a boost in its visibility. And so
it rained a lot. It really rained a lot.
But you just kept biking, huh?
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier, and I think that this is all part of Stroke Onward, so I would like you to talk about all of this, is that you talk about how stroke recovery, like you mentioned, isn't just medical. I mean, it's emotional, spiritual, relational, and the system focuses on physical recovery, but not on rebuilding identity and everything that goes into this. Why do you think that that's been overlooked, and how can we change that? Is Stroke Onward trying to change that?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, I think the why, this is just a hypothesis, but, one, there's just not enough mental health support and emotional health support in our country, period. And it's often got stigma attached to it. People brag about going to the gym to work out to preventatively help their physical health, but you don't hear people bragging about the wonderful counselor they have to just check in. And that seems to be changing a little bit.
That's
But
interesting.
the other thing is that stroke grew up in the critical care silos of our medical system because it starts as a critical intervention. And then it, for everyone, becomes a rehabilitative intervention. And by the time, we tell the story that for 3.5 years, Deb was just 100% all about rehab to get back to who she was. And a physical therapist that heard our very first book talk said, "Hey, Deb, if I had tried to talk to you about what you wrote about and talk about when we were working together 1.5 years after your stroke, I would have had a black eye, bloody nose, fat lip, or all three, because you wouldn't have wanted to hear about rebuilding a different life. You were getting your old life back." And so usually by the time people get to the place where they really need that support, they're already disconnected from the medical system. Because unlike other chronic conditions like MS or ALS, stroke isn't a deteriorating condition. Once you bottom out, you're stable. You don't need that constant medical care. So you lose touch with most aspects of the medical system. So that's really what Stroke Onward is all about, is trying to figure out what additions or changes to the medical system could help people reconnect with the kinds of support they need when they need it. And one of the challenges is that everybody needs it at a different time. Some people get to that acceptance point of, okay, my life's going to be different now. What do I do in 3 months? And some people it's 3 years, and some people it's 10 years. So how do you connect them at the right time? And that really is what Stroke Onward's working on.
Yeah, you did mention about how like psychiatrists and psychologists and social workers and those types of people should be involved from the get-go.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, you're working on your physical self, and like you weren't ready for it, but sometimes those things just need to be in place and help you through the journey, and they are there when you want or need them.
I agree.
And of course, you then get into the whole ball of wax of, will insurance, if people have insurance, will insurance pay for it?
Yeah, and that was another point in your book, that awareness runs, it's unfortunate that recovery isn't just personal, it's social. And how do we make sure that everyone, regardless of income or zip code, has a fair shot at the whole person recovery. And what do we need to do for health equity?
Equity is so a part of. Yeah.
One of the reasons we chose Liz Wolfson, our CEO, is because she's sort of lived her life committed to issues of equity. Her last big venture was around schools and access to quality education for all kids, no matter their backgrounds. And you know, it's a huge problem in our country, and certainly not one that we're going to solve. But you know, what we're trying to do is, as we think about the changes that we might want to try to catalyze in the healthcare system, that we try to do it in such a way that it's benefiting the broadest possible swath of the population in need. In fact, most notably those who have the fewest resources. And there is no easy answer. And you know, we're not so naive as to think we're going to fix that whole problem, but we want to be very conscious of it so that the work we do doesn't just help and improve the people with the best access to medical care and the most resources to self-fund if they need to, but rather, you know, focus on how is it most broadly available. Everything, all the resources we've currently created and disseminated are all available free to everyone, so that at least at that level, cost is not a barrier.
Yeah.
So people can just contact StrokeOnward after somebody has a stroke, and then you provide these resources or direct them where they need to be.
And the book guide is aphasia, social work, or medical professionals.
On our website, Deb was talking about book discussion guides, and we've got free downloadable. So particularly for people with aphasia or speech therapists who might want to do a book group, we've got some materials that make the book more digestible, or even just, you know, good old-fashioned Oprah book group, sort of suggested questions to let a broad group of people, even if they aren't directly connected to stroke, think about these issues of identity and rebuilding. We've been told by people who have been part of book groups of a group of people kind of our age who are all contemplating retirement, that it was super helpful to think about these issues in that context. We have a new effort that was just launched on World Stroke Day at the end of October, called the StrokeOnward Community Circle, or we abbreviate it SOCK, S-O-C-C, not S-O-C-K, but we do have a sock drawer on the platform. And it's being built to be a robust, interactive platform for survivors, family members, care partners, medical professionals who are interested in deepening the understanding of these emotional journey issues and helping to sort of build the movement that can drive change. So there are chat rooms and resources and live events on this platform called SOCK. And so, yeah, we're trying to get people who care about this and who need support directly. So stroke survivors who feel alone and disconnected can find community.
Yeah.
Same for care partners and family members. Same for medical professionals who may think, God, our system just doesn't do this well. I wonder if there's anybody thinking about how to do it better. And our hope is to build a very broad coalition of people who can both support each other in an ever-evolving platform that can take shape as the desires kind of reveal themselves, but then also be part of a movement to say, okay, what change can we really work toward to make it better? So that's one of StrokeOnward's biggest efforts right now, is the launch and building of this platform called SOCK.
It is so amazing that, again, you are taking your pain and putting it into purpose, and you're creating this website, strokeonward.org. Is that correct?
That's the website, and on the website, there's a link to the Stroke Onward Community Circle, which is the more interactive piece. We didn't do that through the website. We created a separate platform.
I mean, it's just brilliant. You saw a need and you did it. I mean, it's very, very unfortunate that you had this stroke and your life took this path. But what is amazing about it is that you took it. And one of the most profound things in your book, I loved it, because I love when people turn things into something when they went through something horrific. We always talk about pain into purpose on the podcast, and it always circles back, like we said earlier, to perspective. And you've turned this experience into purpose for sure. Instead of recreating a lesser version of your old life, you've integrated your new identity with your old one. And you said, by embracing my stroke as part of my identity, I can now explore and teach in new ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was so profound to me. I just sat in that for a while, because, you figured it out. You're teaching in new ways.
Yeah.
I mean, talk a little bit about the process that brought you there, and how you got here in ways that you never expected.
Yeah.
I think when we first started, when the book first came out, or even while we were still writing the book, the aphasia community and the professionals, the incredible, wonderful professionals, speech therapists who focus on supporting people with aphasia, and many of them are university based, and so there's tons of great research, as well as clinical programs. Really, kind of, because people with aphasia have so much frustration as to how to rebuild their lives, that community really embraced our thinking and our ideas early on, and became really important allies and many, many good friends. And I think, there's no question that when you're faced with a trauma and you're thinking about a transition, getting
Mhm.
that reinforcement that what you might do would actually be really, really welcomed and appreciated and needed, that helps fuel purpose.
Yeah.
And I think for Deb,
it's really a lot of the aphasia classes, the Zoom classes, and really a lot of Zoom classes.
yeah, I mean, a number of speech therapy professors have built the book into their curriculum, and we often get invitations to come talk to the class, mostly via Zoom, because just practically speaking, and that's unbelievably rewarding to be able to talk to a group of 30
I
eager,
bet.
budding speech therapists who are going to go out and help people. And now we're able to give them this foundation so that hopefully they do so
Right.
with the perspective of the broader journey. But
And
and when the book came out and sort of looked at, okay, what next? We recognized that maybe there's an opportunity to do even more that's meaningful. And that led to the creation of Stroke Onward.
and the lectures, I'd like to teach.
Yeah, and one of the things Deb loves most about her work at Stroke Onward is giving talks, where
Okay.
through the challenge of her communication, which obviously is significant, she can still bring her unique perspective as an identity scholar, an author, and a person with lived experience of stroke and aphasia to help other people understand something that maybe hearing it from an academic, a professor in the field today, doesn't land as sort of meaningfully as hearing it from somebody with lived experience.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Right.
so, that kind of that kind of lecturing, which is very different than a classroom, but that's very rewarding to Deb and incredibly impactful.
Yeah.
You often talk about individuality and meeting everyone where they are in your book. And I say that all the time here, whether it's for a stroke or trauma or grief or any other kind of loss. Every person's recovery is so unique. And the only way to help a person is to meet them where they are. So I think that that's really amazing. I want to switch gears here, though. I want to ask you about technology. And you've written about technology driven adaptation, communication aids, and how tools like AI can help survivors rebuild identity and independence. Can you share how that's unfolding and what gives you hope about the future?
11 Labs, the company, the 11 Labs. Um,
Want me to help?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just three examples of the ways Deb is using technology, both for continued efforts to rehabilitate, to gain more capability, but also to adapt to what she has. 11 Labs is an AI voice company based in London that sort of the leader of replicating people's voices. And lots of people talk about all the dangers of
Wow.
that because of deep fakes and things like that.
Sure.
In Deb's case, we were able to load into their software some examples of talks she's given. It's created an AI-driven voice that now we can enter a script into the software and it will speak with a voice that isn't exactly Deb's, but it's pretty darn close.
Yeah, I agree.
And what that's let her do in a few situations where she was giving longer talks to say, gosh, the amount of time I have to spend practicing to be able to give the talk is immense.
Wow.
And it prevents me from doing other things that I enjoy. So we would take little pieces of the talk and put the script into 11 Labs and we call Deb's AI voice Debatar, and let Debatar speak for her.
Oh
And
my gosh, that's so cool.
it doesn't replace her voice, but it extends it and it amplifies it.
Oh,
And
wow.
the 11 Labs is the impact, ALS and respiratory.
Yeah, they have something they call their impact program, which is to give a million people their voices back. And so they're partnering with nonprofits. We have a partnership with Stroke Onward. If anybody who joins our community circle that has a speech impairment can get a free license of their software through a partnership that we've formed with them. And they've done that with others. And their goal is to provide 1 million free licenses worldwide
Oh
to
my gosh.
regain their voice. Another one that Deb uses is something called a neural sleeve, which is like a neoprene sleeve that goes over her leg that has sensors in it and a
Okay.
computer-driven brain that knows what her gait is supposed to be like and stimulates the muscles that should be firing that her brain may not be telling to fire. So it's
Oh my gosh.
a rehab tool that Deb is using, again, 15 years after her stroke, to try to continue to improve her walking capability.
And 3 days ago, the Cam.
Oh yeah, when I mentioned somebody commented how much better she was walking.
Oh yeah.
Deb was using this device to help. And then a third one is a company called Microtransponder that has a product called Vivistem that was recently approved by the FDA, which is it's an implant. It's kind of like a pacemaker, but instead of hooking it up to the heart, it's hooked up to the vagus nerve. It stimulates the vagus nerve, and their data that if you do intensive therapy while stimulating the vagus nerve, it improves the brain's ability to rewire itself and learn. So they've got FDA approval to plant the device and then have a regimen, a 6-week regimen of intensive physical therapy. And Deb is looking at having that surgery to see if she can regain functional use of her right arm. And so,
And the tandem, the foot.
oh, there's another company, another product Deb has tried is a company called In Tandem that has a music. They basically put a sensor on your shoe,
Yeah.
to detect the gait rhythm, and then it selects music with that gait pace to try to encourage you to walk more consistently at the gait that
Oh
your
my
physical
gosh.
therapist has said is the best gait for you in your rehab. So I think the idea is that there's such an overlap because hope is such a powerful thing that while we don't focus on rehabilitation per se, the intersection between these new tech-driven, is it a rehab device or is it an adaptive device? That line is blurry. And if it gives people hope that they can continue to live a fuller, better life, then it improves their mental state and their emotional
Right.
state, and that
Right.
translates into other aspects of their life. So we see a lot of great opportunity, and in fact, we think with Stroke Onward, one of the places is creating partnerships with these kinds of companies to
Mm.
really help them access the people they're trying to reach and also get input from people with lived experiences to develop and refine these products, is a real opportunity for us.
I mean, this is so inspiring to me to hear how innovation and humanity can work together. I mean, you hear so many negative things about AI and different things like that, but this is just, I mean, it can be used for such good.
Yeah.
But you both are living proof that rebuilding identity isn't about going back, it's about growing forward. So, as we close, I just want to ask you one more thing because this is who you are. You've said that this journey has been about finding new ways to do the things that matter, to keep meaning, joy, and connection alive, maybe laughing deeper and more connection and having more time and those kind of things after all these years with patience, partnership, and purpose together. What does living in tandem mean to you now?
Stroke Onward is really trying to do something something cool.
So, Stroke Onward is basically living in tandem with people that have had strokes and their families.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think about it from a relationship perspective, and it's just
Mhm.
it's just doing the hard work to stay in balance and deal with what sucks and celebrate what's great and do it in a way that ultimately works for both of us. And neither of us
Mhm.
feels like a burden and neither of us resents.
See,
And it's really I sometimes I say this has got nothing to do with being stroke survivor and care partner. This is what relationships
it's
are.
just that's all.
This maybe got a little bit more difficult because disabilities create an imbalance to what we were used to, and we have to lean into that and not let it drive us apart, but find ways to to work to work on it together. And I guess the tandem example, we gotta pedal at the same time. If we don't, we don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Can people get to your book through your website? Is it everywhere? I mean, how do they reach you? Just through strokeonward.org and go to Amazon for your book or
And the Amazon that the audiobook is out.
Yeah, so
Oh.
there's a page on our website that has links to 4 or 5 major resellers. It's at most of the online,
Okay.
some bookstores. The audiobook is actually being distributed by a really cool startup company called Audiobrary. It's available at all the major audiobook, places, Audible, whatnot, but it's also available at Audiobrary, which is a startup that really celebrates narrators and their role in bringing media out.
That's great.
You can get to all of that from the website at www.strokeonward.org, and then just look for the book, and it's all there.
Yeah.
Well, Deborah Meyerson and Steve Zuckerman, thank you for reminding us that while identity can be shaken, it can also be rebuilt, that love can be redefined, and that even when life changes in ways we never imagined, we can still move forward together. Their book, Identity Theft, Rediscovering Ourselves After Stroke, second edition, is available now, and I encourage every listener to check out Stroke Onward, the nonprofit they co-founded to support stroke survivors and families. This has been Life in Tandem, and I had to name it that because a story of courage, connection, and the endless capacity to begin again. And Deborah, you show us that life is not over after a major event like a stroke. You are not done. You are becoming. Remember, there is purpose in the pain and there is hope in the journey. I am Ann from Real Talk with Tina and Ann, and we will see you next time.
World changers aren't pleasing